Okay, we got our Crack Pack boys. Love those Muppets. They're squirrely, but if there's anybody out there, I heard some rumblings that some people were thinking that the Crack Pack was. I think people just didn't understand that they're goofing around, they're having a good time. But if you guys see them like I don't know, you think they're mistreating each other or anything, trust me, they're all in on it. They're just having a goof. Um, questions. Mo, Mo, Mo. That's a good one. I always avow the pack. I cannot. I'm sorry, but I must not and cannot avow the crack. It's not a casual thing. I'm afraid there's history there. You guys may have seen a little something like this on Crack Mountain, maybe in the possession of D-Wag. Let's just say that I've never been to Crack Mountain, but in my travels through the cosmos, boys, Crack Pack, Crack Mountain's not the end-all be-all. Crack Mountain, think of it as a love note from Crack Planet.
Joe decided to set out on his journey to discover Crack Rock Planet. When Joe arrived at Crack Rock Planet, he planted the Crack Pack flag alongside the U.S. flag. He then decided to take a hunk of the planet, for research. He then realized that the Crack Pack was about supporting one another and helping each other rather than tearing each other down.
Welcome to the show. I've been busy as I've been away on my travels. I borrow ideas. Welcome the first attendee, friend, family member in this, the return of Fultonland Live to the land of the living. Good to see you, my friend. Art CS, I'm glad you caught the show. I loved every single one of you chatters who were there. That was a warm up. I'll leave it at that. That was a warm up. There's more of that on the way. Altermont Schneili, Guten, was it Guten Tag where you're at now? Not sure. Either Guten Morgen or Guten Tag, possibly Guten Nacht. Glad you could join us. Johnny Rando, we're well. I've got a bit of a cough, I'm afraid. That's one of those things, those little souvenirs that COVID leaves after you kick it out the door. But I'll try and mute whenever possible. If I have to leave for a minute or two to take care of some phlegm, then I will hand Russ the con, and he'll steer the ship until I can get back.
And I'll cough here for a while instead.
There you go. Good man. Statistical Zero, Stato. I should have known you'd been lurking, waiting in the wings, drawing your cartoons. Glad to see you. Eric Weathers, this one's for you, buddy.
Thanks, sir.
Flying Fortress.
What a shirt.
Ted Lehman's artwork. Eric Weathers' creation. My first gig in comics. That I consider my first gig. My first credited book. My name is listed as an editor. Prior to that, I did some editorial consulting. No charge, no credit. Didn't want any. Just wanted to meet people. But yeah, Flying Fortress is where I got my start. So I'm ride or die with the weatherman until he tells me to take a hike. That's just the way it is. Robert Shepard, good to see you. Welcome. Amanda B, we know you too. You know us guys. We know you guys. Glad you could join us. Hope you're having a good day at work. Eyebrow ideas. You sure there's a fetish for that? Could you be more specific? Coughing? Wearing Eric Weathers apparel? I might have a few fetishes by those definitions. Who else do we have this morning? We've got Crazy Mad. Good to see you. Yodam Darkstar.
Hello. Thanks very much. I sent a book off to Yotam.
Oh,
and
great.
It took a hell of a long time, but finally it got there.
Had to clear a few different
Thank you.
customs departments, maybe.
Yeah, probably.
Eric the Quapo. He says the divine thunderbuns was raining fiery brimstone from heaven last night on Arch Stream.
Certainly was. I watched the replay of that, and yeah,
Oh, yeah?
you were bringing it. Yeah.
Did you find some ingredients in that stew that you found a little spicy, maybe
Oh,
a
yeah,
little tasty?
There was definitely some spice in there. Yeah, hot peppers.
Well, I think I said on the show that I was able to finally get into first gear after this little adventure with COVID. Didn't quite get to shift into second gear last night. Had some time constraints and I never really want to ever take over a show. So I try to be very conscientious of other people and their contributions, and I sometimes it seems like it's unavoidable when you're on a panel show like that to interrupt people. I try not to do it. So there was a lot of times in that show where I started to say something and then stopped, or it was like and then pull it back.
Yeah, it happens.
That's just the nature of panel shows. But as we're able to move forward with our Fultonland Live Thursday shows with you and I, and we'll still continue to bring guests in periodically. I've got a few in mind for next week's show. I'd really like to spotlight a few different campaigns, and start talking about one right now that you guys might have heard of, Black and White Volume 2. Art T. Bear, who graciously asked me to co-write the book with him. And we have had a phenomenal time. I'm happy to say that Art has said both privately and publicly that he's just having the time of his life with this book. And personally, I think he's doing the best work of his career, and I don't say that lightly. That guy is just blowing me away with what he's got ammo in his belt that he's never shown before, and he's bringing it now in this book. So, guys, the plan is that the campaign will launch today. Details to be provided, but I just found out this morning, actually, that Ethan Van Sciver announced publicly that he intended to launch with Art Black and White 2 on his channel. So,
wow.
Comic Artist Pro Secrets apparently is going to be the launch pad. I don't have an exact time yet. Anybody who knows Ethan well enough knows that he marches to the beat of his own drum and he doesn't like to follow schedules. So getting a commitment of a start time out of him is never something you can just take for granted. That guy, to quote John Malin, Ethan's got dreams too, and he's got a whole lot of them that he's been making come true lately. So right now I'll say the plan is that Black and White 2 launches today. Art is probably trying to put together a little campaign preview show for some time today. I don't know if it'll happen because things are happening behind the scenes that are very big and moving very fast. And Art and I are basically just trying to stay buckled in and keep our wigs from blowing off of our domes. That's kind of where we're at. But today is
mine's gone.
Today is a big day for sure for Black and White, for Art, for myself. So if you get a chance, give him a word of encouragement. He absolutely appreciates it, and we're going to have a lot of fun launching this book. So I think we've got some more friends joining us. So I'm going to just kind of roll through the chat here, and then we'll continue on with the show. Peyton Olden, my favorite troll. And my new Twitter friend, and one day maybe you'll get that wrench that you've been oh so subtly asking for. Around here, Peyton, you may be aware of this, but just in case you're not, or there's new folks in the chat who aren't sure what we do around here. Fultonland is a free and independent kingdom within the land of Comicsgate that resides within the borders of the continent of independent comics. Now, recently, there was a part of the continent referred to as the mainstream comic book industry. And sadly, that has been rapidly sliding into the ocean. So you won't hear me talk about that as being part of what we're doing. There's still some fine, upstanding, thoroughly decent people who are highly skilled professionals who I really hope are making their way out of that disaster over to where things are thriving. If they're able to do it, we will welcome you with open arms. All you got to do is say, hello, this is my name, pleased to meet you. And then we can get started on helping you in your career in ways that never would have been possible in the former mainstream. And I can say that because I grew up in it. And I've got friends who worked in it for decades. So, excuse me. Let's see who else we've got in the chat. We've got some excitement here for Black and White too. I'm glad to hear that. We've got just an incredible adventure for you guys. And when you start seeing the artwork, I'd really like to get some feedback on what you guys think. Good, bad, right, wrong. There's no such thing as a bad opinion, a bad reaction. Stato says, I feel like someone highlights my comments as their subtle way of giving people the bird. Stat, if you want to see just how subtle I am when I give people the bird, you can watch the Pontificator show from last night on Art's channel.
Nothing subtle about that.
Starting about the 58-minute mark. If you like spice in your stew, then you may like what you get there. Noah from NTM Comics, how you doing, buddy? I'd like to know how work is going on your volume 2 of Maverick. So when you get a chance, either in the chat here or if you want to do it on Twitter, if you could just give us a status update. We're all invested in you and what you're doing. So we like seeing progress. And if you're stuck, reach out. Talk to people who are experienced, who have been there, and we'll help you get you unstuck. And we're not going to do it for you, but we'll help you figure out how to get yourself unstuck. That's how we do it in the indies. Slavic One, thank you. I am very glad that I recovered as well. I'm still on the road to recovery. I'm inching up on about 25% recovered to the point before I got sick. So for a long time, my voice was shattered. I could talk, but it was really difficult to understand me. My lung capacity was just destroyed. My medical team said I went from 100% capacity, whatever that was, down to 1% capacity, basically 1% left of life. And so once I, kind of got to that gap in between what used to be and what was to come, and I stepped onto the new ground, let's say, of the rest of my life, it's been a very hard-fought but extraordinarily successful recovery process. And I'm happy to say that just like my my sudden change from 1 foot in the grave to both feet out and basically tap dancing in my hospital room and just laughing and cheering everybody up because I felt fantastic. I actually felt 100% cured, not only of the virus, but of the double pneumonia that was also compounding what the virus was doing to me. And I was told I had the worst severity that they can currently classify in Western medicine. There's a group of us because COVID, it's such a filthy, it's such a ravaging disease. And the way that it works is that every case is unique, even though there's some commonalities between all of them. You almost can't find any commonalities between all of them, except, oh, you have some version of COVID. That's the one thing that we all have in common, those of us who have gotten it. Everything else, it's almost like it's a custom self-replicating machine that will customize itself according to whatever host it invades. And I won't go into many more detail on that in this show, but you can bet I'll be talking a lot more about that in future shows. And anybody who has any concerns or questions or curiosity about anything to do with COVID at any level, from the patient to the healthcare workers to the so-called experts who were at the top of the whole thing, telling everybody what to do and how to live, I've learned a lot. I'll just leave it at that. Firsthand experience, eyewitness testimony, I've got it all. So in future shows, if you'd like to talk about that kind of stuff, if you'd like to have me on as a guest to talk about it, I will be 100% transparent. I'm an open book. No question off limits, no reaction inappropriate. You can take what I say and do whatever you want with it. All I'm going to do is tell you from my own experience what happened and what I've learned based on research I've done and the research and the firsthand experience of world-class healthcare professionals from every level you can think of. Because of my life and how I've lived it, it's been an adventurous one for a very long time. That means I've spent more than my fair share probably in hospitals. And I also have very close family members who are world-class healthcare professionals. And my wife, the Lady Fulton, just so happens to be someone with decades of nursing experience in addition to her other qualifications in the medical field. And so she's taken care of literally cancer patients, heart patients. She's watched the worst happen and she's watched the best happen. So I personally could not have asked for a better nurse to watch over me every single day of my recovery. And the recovery, I'm happy to say, just like the day where I went from one foot in the grave to essentially cured, but they had to confirm it with all of their diagnostic equipment and their own eyeballs. It's just been it's been a waterfall of if every impossibility or miracle or however you want to put it is a water droplet, my life from that moment in the hospital bed till now has been a waterfall of miracles or a waterfall of impossibilities burst, however you want to look at it. So that's about all I'm going to say about that for now. But like I said, in the future, I'm an open book. You can ask me anything you want. You can ask me on your show. You can ask to come on my show, whatever it is. My mission as far as that's concerned is to share as much information as I possibly can that I know to either be factually true or I have very strong opinions about what is probably true based on the things I've just said. So let's work through our way through the chat, and then we'll get on with the show. Bristolian Dave. All right, me babbers. Good to see you, Dave. I always love seeing that beautiful mug, even if it's just the cartoon version in the chat. Let's see. Excuse me. Oh yeah, Eric says check out Noah's art. Noah from NTM Comics. You can see definite improvement. He's been practicing. Absolutely, Eric. When I first saw Noah, when I first saw his work and I found out how old he was, I thought if this kid just sticks with it, that's all he has to do. If he just sticks with it, he is going to be a certified pro. And by that, I don't mean he calls himself a pro or he has some wanker saying, oh yeah, we're pros because we went to a con and we sold 5 books of our blah, 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 blah. No, he'll be a pro. He'll be a certified pro in the eyes of his peers because people will be buying his book and telling his peers how good it is. Now, as far as I'm concerned, he's already a pro because he made a book, he sold it, customers bought it, he fulfilled the campaign, customers like Amanda B got his book. Okay? Professional.
The way it works, repetition is the mother of perfection. Keep going.
That's right.
But
So
perfection is the enemy of good. Don't overdo it.
There you go. Listen to Russ dropping knowledge like dimes. My goodness, I've missed this show. Crazy Mad says the whole Pontificator show is fire. I'm really glad you guys liked it. I basically, when I heard what was brewing with Ordway and others, I was really happy to see that the guys on the Pontificators wanted to talk about it. So I basically asked Art for permission to enter the cage bare knuckles, and I promised him I wouldn't say or do anything that would bring any sort of risk to his channel. So he may have gotten a few little night letters, but fortunately for us, Art's a big boy, and night letters are nothing to him. He's done more in his life and solved more problems and overcome more difficulties than any random 100 losers from the former mainstream that I could point out, and Art has done it with a smile. So you may see that comments might be turned off on that video. Don't worry about it. Art is just fine. And by the way, I happen to know that he loved the show. He absolutely loved it. So I'm glad that anybody who watched it, if you enjoyed it, I'm glad. We do it for you. Peyton says, I've loved comics for half a century. I love what you do and I enjoy your shows. Oh, man. I can't even tell you how much that means to me, Peyton. You know what? You just got yourself a wrench, my friend.
Oh, there you go.
Around here, this is in the sovereign, free and independent kingdom of Fultonland. Who, because of the quality of the sovereign citizens, I like to think is a bulwark against foolishness and stupidity in the rest of the world. What we do is when sovereign citizens perform services to the kingdom, which is not service to me, but it's service to all their fellow citizens, because I'm a citizen king, so I'm a citizen along with everybody else. Russ is the samurai general of Fultonland, but he's also a sovereign citizen, so that's how it works around here. Anyone who gets a title, it's in recognition for service to their fellow citizens. So, titles and roles. Peyton, we've got openings. But I think that from what you've been doing with the laughs that you give me, the laughs that you give Art, the laughs that you give the rest of CG, and believe me, laughter is the best medicine. The laughter I got from the live streams and the videos, my entire time at home with COVID, in the hospital with it, and then back home again recovering, best medicine I could ask for. So Peyton, we've already got a jester to the royal court. His name is Mo Biggs. But if you want some other kind of jester title, if you want some kind of encouragement, something that tells people that you are what you do for the rest of us, you just name the title and it's yours. As long as there's no profanity in it, because we're all about all ages entertainment, and YouTube is a 13 plus platform. So on YouTube, it's 13 plus humor. But yeah, as long as there's no profanity in it, then you can have whatever title you like, and we will make it so. So just put it in the chat. I'll keep catching up, and if we get there and you've got the title, great. If not, no worries. Think about it. We can talk offline if you want, because once you have the title bestowed upon you, then all the rest of the citizens will recognize what you do, and don't be surprised if they need a little of the services you provide once in a while. And so because you make people laugh, you might have a few of them. So anyway, moving on. Noah says that Volume 2 is going great, launched a sign-up, which is going wonderfully, got the cover finished, and page 1 is nearing completion. That is what I like to hear. Taking care of business, TCB. Just like the king, Elvis Presley said. There's Noah, taking care of business. Johnny Rando says, COVID heard that Joe was a good host.
That's quite good, isn't it?
Well, Joe heard wrong, because I beat the stuffings out of COVID and did it with a laugh and a smile. Scotsman, good to see you, man. Yeah, John Main was right. This COVID diet, if it doesn't kill you, man, it makes the pounds drop off like you wouldn't believe. I had dropped, before I got COVID, I had dropped 20 pounds just because it was intentionally through diet. Someone in the family wanted to do a weight loss challenge, and I'm a born and bred competitor. So I'd already been thinking of starting in the next month or so. And once they announced it, I said, all right, we'll start on that day. And there was a cash prize. So let's just say that within a week, which is how long it ran, let's just say that I was across the finish line and there was nobody close in second, because I wanted that cash money. I've got a publishing company to run. So then I went a second week. So I lost 12 pounds the first week, and then I think 8 pounds the second week, something like that. because once you start, there's a big drop off right away. It's mostly water weight, but there's a lot of toxins and stuff that gets flushed out. So you always have your biggest jump right in the beginning if you're doing everything in a healthy way. So it's like 12 pounds the first week, 8 pounds the second week. So I'm 20 pounds light, and then I get COVID, and then man, it was just downhill from there. I haven't even weighed myself. I got to go find the scale and see what I'm at. But yeah, I've probably lost like 3 inches off my waist, and it just keeps coming off. So it's good for me. Good for my future. So
Take the pluses.
I got no complaints. Stato says he had the coof. His wife had it, went through 2 weeks sickness, and it totally passed him by. Stato, I was around people who had it, and I was around people constantly who might have had it, and I avoided it for almost 2 years. So, and I had a compromised immune system because I had problems for decades before coof, was even a twinkle in some, well, let's just say in somebody's eye. Schmouchy. So, excuse me, a little bit of a coughing fit there. I'm going to take a glug of water. So anyway, it's really weird. You never know who it's going to get and who not. And if you get it, you don't know how severe. The one thing I can say for anybody who's concerned is get tested early as you possibly can. If you have any anxiety at all, just go get tested. If it costs you, $20, if it costs you $0 because your insurance covers it, whatever, peace of mind is priceless. The people around me having peace of mind that I finally was on the road to recovery, priceless. So if you can, at nothing else, just relieve some anxiety or some concerns for you or your loved ones, I encourage you, just get tested. Eric said, how old are you? I assumed early 30s. Well, I'm mid 40s. I don't give out my exact age for personal reasons that have to do with protecting my family's privacy. There's always the proverbial 12 psychos on the internet that try to correlate little bits of data to go try and ruin your life. And if they can't ruin yours, then they'll do their best to ruin the lives of your loved ones, your family, your friends, your colleagues at work. So there's some things about myself that I've been very open about and will continue to do so. But there's some things that I'm just not, and it's for those reasons. So I'm mid 40s. I will say this. Ethan Van Sciver, Dan Frega, Richard Meyer, and several others, we're all within 2 to 3 years of each other. So
I'm older than a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Russ has got a few years. Russ is, can I give a general time frame, Russ?
Yeah.
Russ is early 50s.
Yeah.
So he's got a few years on me. He's still a young buck compared to Art, but then aren't we all? And right behind Art is Graham by like 2 or 3 months, but for some reason we all think he's 20 years younger than Art. Pedro says, hey, Joe, I'm working the comic skate nurse into my schedule. Attaboy, Pedro. Her husband and kids might have something to say about that, but, if we don't try, then we miss every shot we don't take, right?
Yeah.
All we can do is, act like a gentleman or a lady, take our shot, and then live with the results. Mr. Von Stugel says, you guys got it all wrong. Joe didn't get COVID-19. The Wu flu got Jovid 0.
Yeah.
Jovid 00. He had a license to kill, so he used it on COVID. Darren, good to see you, buddy. He says, hell in the cell. That's right. It was some match. Good to see you, D-Wack. Rick Saylor, good to see you, man. You're one of the guys that I thought about a lot when I was in that hospital bed. And I was thinking about all the ways that I'm going to have to adjust the Outliers production schedule to keep everything trucking. And it was guys like you, Rick, and Johnny Rando and countless others where I'm like, these guys, they know what they want. They know when they want it. And it's up to us to deliver it. So, because you guys are the bosses and we're the workers. And you've made it very clear what you expect from us. At least from my perspective, I feel like I've got a crystal clear outline of what you guys want me to produce. So that's the plan, and that's exactly what we've been doing. And because Russ is such a pro and so adaptable and just rolls with whatever comes along, I was able to give him an enormous amount of freedom to just keep on trucking. And in fact, he not only did, but he picked up speed. And when you guys see the quality of work this guy's cranking out, it's going to blow your minds. Russ, do you think we've got like 1 to 3 pages we might be able to show? Not necessarily at this moment, but just queued
Yeah,
up. Okay,
I
great.
got two pages of Outliers and a page of Only Death for you.
Perfect. Okay, so when we get to the point in the show, then we'll show the good people what you've been working on. Okay, let me get caught up with the chat, and then we'll get on with the show. George Travelos, good to see you, George. Glad you could join us.
George.
Eric Hutfuls, Rick Saylor, that's what I like to hear. 44 and still getting her done. And we're going to keep getting her done for as long as it's required of us to do so. This is good advice, in my opinion, from Rick. Start taking vitamin C, D, zinc, and all immunity boosters. My personal opinion, having gone through it, having avoided the coup for as long as I did, because I did much like Rick. That's just my MO. Because of all my past medical problems, which I'm happy to say are no longer problems, that all disappeared. I'm off of all medication. I've been off of it for weeks. I had one nasty round of withdrawals in the hospital when I stopped taking a medication that I used to take for irritable bowel syndrome. And it's one of those things where it's not a narcotic, but it does cause a physical dependency that you have no control over. It's chemically designed to do that. And so once I stopped taking that, I went through like a nasty 24 to 48 hour round of withdrawals, which I've been through many times because my pharmacy and the administration between the pharmacy and the doctor's office, they're very bureaucratic, very inefficient. So I've had at least a dozen times over the decades where they didn't get my prescription filled on time. So I had no choice but to just go through withdrawals while they got their act together and got the new prescription. So I'm very familiar with the process. If anybody's seen the movie Ray, where it depicts Ray Charles going through withdrawals from heroin and alcohol and who knows what else, let's just say it's accurate. But yeah, I'm since then I've been clean as a whistle, and the only thing that bothers me at all, and it's very minor at that, is because I've got 4 titanium screws in my lumbar spine that are holding my lumbar back together with the bone that grew around it. And so because those are in there, I have persistent, constant back pain that I just manage. But I'm off of all painkillers. I'm off of everything, and I have been for weeks. So 44 and still getting it done, Rick. I'm right there with you. We're going to be getting it done for many, many years. Amanda, good point. Everyone's a 42-year-old male.
Wish I was.
We're all in it together. We're all walking the path of the 42-year-old male. Excuse me. Oh, thank you, Eric, for posting that link to the Outliers. I appreciate that. So I haven't done formal updates on the mail list up to this point because I wanted production to get to a certain stage where we could just start rocking you guys with our updates. And we're just about there. Koof threw me for a loop, but now that I'm back and I'm getting the team all synced up and I've got things already in motion that will help us to do that more efficiently, we're going to be putting together some killer updates for you. And because the launch of the campaign had to be postponed, I'm actually really happy that we didn't do any big updates through the mail list. It was all done through this show. It was done through Twitter. It was done on other shows. So enough people, I think, were kept in the loop that you guys had a good idea of what was going on. But I did want to mention that going forward, after a couple more things are in place, maybe in a couple weeks, we will start publishing updates through the mail list along with all the other channels that I just talked about. We want to make sure everybody knows exactly what's happening with production at all times. So in that light, Russ, could you give the people a quick update on the status of line art, both pencils and inks?
Yeah, pencils are all done. Inks
for the entire book?
For the entire book.
Oh my goodness.
Inks are up to page 42, which is on my desk right now.
Out of a total of how many pages?
48.
Wait. Are you telling me that you're inking 42 out of 48 right now? Today?
Today.
Tomorrow?
48 will be finished on Sunday.
Oh my goodness.
That's about where we are with pencils. I know that there's some extra stuff to do that we've discussed that will be coming online in the next couple of months or so.
It will be worked into your schedule.
Because I've got Only Death Can Save Us production starting next Wednesday, and I already have a big chunk of stuff done for that as well.
Excellent. Great. So an update on the color work. I had a great meeting with Inkspots last night. He, much like myself, has been on quite a roller coaster ride in 2021. And so we did some color tests. We got some great progress done, but then he had to basically take a hiatus from, what's up, Phil? My brother from another mother. Good to see you. So Inkspots had to take a hiatus from Outliers work to take care of other things. Some of it professional that was outside of his control. Some schedule deadlines got pushed out repeatedly, and he's contractually obligated in those to just basically write it out. So he and I had a great conversation where I said, you know what, man, take as long as you need. I'm going to wait as long as I possibly can because there's a reason why I recruited you specifically, just like everybody else on the team. So I'm going to wait as long as I possibly can. All I need from you is updates on when things change, and we can roll with this for a long time. I build a lot of lead time into every milestone on every project that I work, and that's the same when I was working in a Fortune 100 R&D tech company, just as it is now in comics. Projects are projects, and project management is project management. And the skills and the lessons learned, all that stuff is directly transferable. So fortunately, with that past experience, I was able to put together the Outliers production schedule with lots of lead time at every milestone, which has absorbed, you wouldn't even believe the number of delays that would have hit us and knocked us on our butts if we hadn't had that time already planned in there. That combined with the flexibility of the team members to roll with unexpected delays or unexpected difficulties, inefficiencies. It's all just been amazing. So anybody out there who's thinking of getting into this business, do yourself a favor, meet people, find out who the good people are that you really want to work with, and then continue getting to know them better. And if you develop what I call a human network, meaning you be nice to people, you help them out without expecting any reward or recognition for it, people will do the same in kind. And before you know it, you've spent a year just getting to know people, and you've got this great network of resources at your disposal that anything you need, all you say is, hey guys, I need help. Is anyone available? Right there. Multiple people. So I'm very, very from my perspective, I'm very blessed to have the team with me that I've got, and I'm basically, I mentioned with Eric Weathers earlier, and I'll say it for my team. I'm ride or die with every one of these guys till they want to kick me to the curb or they've got stuff that happens that takes them away from Outlier Comics, whatever it is. They earn my trust, they earn my loyalty. And that was all long after they already had my respect for their work and respect for them as people after I got to know them. So if you're thinking about getting into this business, I highly recommend you start with people. Before you start thinking about objectives, before you start thinking about money, before you start thinking about any of it. I had 3 careers before comics. Every single one of them, I entered on my own terms. I became successful, and by some measures, extremely successful. And then I left on my own terms to go do something bigger and better, quote unquote. So this is the 4th time that I've done it. And I can tell you I'm having more fun than I ever had in my life. I'm working harder than I ever had before in my life. And when you work for a Fortune 100 R&D tech company with offices on 6 continents, and you suspect on a 7th, but it's so hush-hush that the most you can get out of the government guys who work for the company, the interface with the spooks, is, well, let's just say if they were using this and that type of equipment on that 7th continent at the bottom of the world, you wouldn't be surprised. All right, say no more. So when you work for that type of a company, and you're doing very well, it means you're working all the time and you're working extremely hard. I enjoyed it in the beginning, but over the course of a decade, it became soul crushing. In the last few years, it was just an anchor around my neck. The money, don't care. Money for me is an instrument that I use to accomplish objectives, whether that's paying bills or buying my kids new clothes or whatever it is. That's all it is. That's not how I've always viewed it, but let's just say in the course of my life, that's how I came to view it, and I've been very happy since then.
Yeah.
So when it comes to money and this business and trying to get rich or just trying to get your project funded, believe me when I say that I understand what it's like to have that as being a focus and to have it feel like, it's so important. You have to hit that number, et cetera, et cetera. All of my life experience, my 3 careers before comics, everything, and being in comics, has shown me over and over. And Russ, I'd like to hear your take on this too, because you've had careers before comics and you've been in comics now long enough that I think you've got a very keen perspective on this. And I'm not going to ask you to agree with a word that I say. I'm just going to ask you to say it like it is from your perspective. Basically, I think that money is a tool that can be used to build or destroy. It's like a hammer. A hammer can knock down walls, but a hammer can also frame up walls, brand new walls for a new house. Rick Saylor does it all the time. Lord Crackhead 33 does it all the time. Stick framing a house, you're using that hammer. And so just like you can use a hammer to build or destroy, you can use money the same way. But money is only one tool. And there are so many other tools that a builder uses to build something. And they understand when they have a little bit of experience under their belt. A builder understands that the most efficient and effective way for you to build something that will last, something of quality, is to know how to use the right tool for the right job. You know how to do that, and then you get good at it through practice, through failing, through picking yourself up after failure and learning how to succeed, and you keep doing it to a high level of proficiency. You get into the crowdfunding game, and before you know it, you'll find out you've had skills and abilities and resources that you didn't realize would be so well suited as instruments to play that symphony or as tools to build that house. So
no, definitely.
That's my take, Russ, but I'd like to hear your perspective as somebody who had a totally different upbringing, totally different career path, but yet we ended up in a similar spot.
Yeah, hard work takes you to the same place. Money's a means to an end. Just chasing money in and of itself will not bring happiness or contentment in any way, shape, or form. And people say, "Oh, well, yeah, tell that to the guy that's got a Ferrari and girls hanging off his arm, or what, or the woman that's got everything she wants." It's like, yeah, okay, fine. If they're happy, then good on them. But I'm just talking very, very generally. It doesn't work. You've got to go for what makes you happy. And like you, I didn't have 3. I had 2 careers, although maybe I had 3. I did a few things when I was a lot younger, but I've had lots of different jobs. I've had two very distinct careers prior to doing this, although both of them were creative. So it kind of put me in good stead for what I was going to do here since 2010.
Yeah.
You've got to chase what makes you happy. And so part of my decision process was also about quality of life as well. And at the moment, I'm working my nuts off. I'm not going to get a day off this week. Most of the time, I'm working 6 days a week. I don't want to continue like that because I'm not going to last 3 years, at 6 days a week. I've got to get back to 5 days a week, or and so that gives me that bit of room for when you're in a crunch situation.
And that's your number that you arrived for your own personal experience.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's good because I do get to see my family because I work at home all the time. Yeah. But I'm not getting enough quality time at the moment because I'm working so hard. But that's okay because I'm starting a business and people will say, well, hold on a minute, you've been going since 2010. Why are you starting a business?
Yeah.
Well, that's the way it works. Your business, I had to start. I've literally had to start from nothing, and work my way through building contacts. That takes time,
Yep.
and then you have to put in effort and you have to put in the work, and then you get to a point. And really, I would say I started building my business last year when I came up with my first book. Prior to that, I was working for other people. Okay, I was self-employed, but I was working for other people. So that's kind of why you have to put those hours in. And it's but at the same time, you're getting you're getting a lot back for it. You're getting a lot in return, and that's what you're looking for. That should be what your main purpose is, to get that kind of that feedback from what you do, because it's something you do most of the time. It's what you're going to pay your bills with. It's what you're going to spend most of your time doing. So you've got to really, really want to do it. So don't bother going into comics for the money, because that's not the way you should approach it. The money will come if you work hard, if you give yourself to it, if you commit. It will come. It will come. I've seen it happen for myself. I've seen it happen. Okay.
Absolutely.
But not all successes look the same, and that's something that I would say that's some kind of a word towards what's been going on in the industry at the moment. What you would consider to be a professional, what it is it only mainstream? Is it only mainstream work that you would consider yourself as a success?
Right.
Okay, and it's like, no, that's not the way it works anymore. Just being out there, having people read your work. We're all creatives, we're all communicators, and it's the feedback loop that is the most important thing. That's why your readers, why your customers, however you want to approach it, that's why they're the most important thing. Because without them, you get no loop. You get no feedback. So,
and Russ, I know that you know this, but the concept of a feedback loop, if people in the chat, if you're not familiar with that, I'm going to write it here. I'm going to write feedback loop, comma, feedback array. Now, if you guys are not familiar with the concept of a feedback loop, look it up. And you'll see, once you see what it is and understand it, you'll see this pattern everywhere you look. Feedback loops are everywhere, part of the human existence. Now, one of the things that we try to do, Russ, myself, some other creators, and it just takes time and hard work and a whole lot of persistence, is you try and get your business into a position where you have, through the way that you interact with people, you set up a feedback loop to where you're saying, hey, I'd like to produce something. This is what I'm thinking. What do you guys think? They give you the feedback. You adjust to that feedback, and then you come back with the adjusted description, and then they respond to it. And then you start this feedback loop that kind of looks like the symbol for infinity, right? And it just keeps going and going and going. And so you could be somebody like Aria Black, who I saw in the chat, my buddy from Wales. You could be somebody with your first campaign, and it takes a whole lot of time and effort and hard work just to get that funding goal, just to hit that threshold. And then if you go beyond that, it takes a whole lot of work to keep it moving. Now, there's other people who work just as hard, but they don't fund. To me, I don't call that a failure. I know we call it a failed campaign. That's just the lingo that's used.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't call that a failure unless the person didn't learn from it and they just quit.
Yeah, if they don't come back the second time, it's a failure.
Then I would say, yeah, that's a failure.
If they come back, then it's a learning
exactly.
Exercise.
If they come back and they try to learn from what happened, and then like Richard Embry with The Devil from Talon Flats, his campaign wasn't going well according to his own standards for what that means. So he pulled it and he retooled it, and he's coming back a second time. Now, to me, that's not a failure. That's an incredibly valuable learning experience. To me, an incredible, valuable learning experience, that's a success in my personal definition. But, we all think our own ways, and we do things our own way. But so for Russ, I can look at Russ with the success you've had financially on Only Death. And to me, the way that you approached the work from the very beginning, when you just started talking to people, when you and I met in a live stream somewhere, a chat, and I said something to you and you said something back to me, that started a chain of interactions that none of us could have predicted that led all the way up to this point and continues to lead all the way into the future for
Yes.
however long this train is going to take us.
Yeah, it's karmic. You're going to get it back.
It started with two guys who didn't know each other.
Yeah.
And one guy said something that was either polite or kind or friendly or whatever it was, and the other guy responded in kind.
Yeah.
One nice thing for one person, one day.
And
imagine
again,
go ahead.
You're looking at the industry in general. Like, I know this has come up in the last couple of weeks, customer service. Okay. Any industry where you sell something to people is a customer service industry.
Yes.
You must be, but it's not just about that. It's about professional courtesy.
Absolutely.
Generally, my mum used to say to me, bless her, it's like, be nice to people because, on the way back down,
yeah,
you're gonna need a hand. You just like politeness costs you nothing. Costs you nothing.
You may even need to have 6 of those people holding a net to catch you so that you don't splatter all over the sidewalk.
Exactly.
It's happened to me so many times in my life I can't even begin to count.
Yeah. So it's just general professionalism, and also we have this thing about CG and independent comics and what have you. I think there's a lot more passing backwards and forwards than you might think. And it's just from people being professional and polite.
Oh, no, yeah.
And
no,
getting on
I
with
agree with you. Yeah.
Getting on with their business, getting on with their work, and like that, it's okay for them to have an opinion, and they just make sure that as they just get on with their business and polite and courteous, and that's what happens in business. People have opinions, and it's okay, and it goes backwards and forwards. But this layer on the top, this Twitter layer on the top, that's crap. That's just that's not making people money. That's for sure. It's hindering business.
Oh, so. I would say that Twitter, again, I look at it as a tool that can be used to build or destroy. So unfortunately, most users of that tool appear to want to use it to destroy.
Yeah, but I don't. But that's this thing about not being professional or polite to each other.
Exactly.
It's stuff that they would never. There's stuff that you would never do. I know that there are people on Twitter. I don't get into rows on Twitter because I only post art and comic books. I'm not interested in anything else on Twitter. Okay, just art and comic books. That's it. Nothing else. But I know that there are people on there that if they got in my face, wouldn't be brave enough to say it to me face to face.
Oh yeah, you and me both.
And it's that is frustrating because it's not about being threatening or putting people down personally or in person. It's that they seem to lose this milk of human kindness. They lose the humanity. They lose empathy, and that's why Twitter is quite a horrific tool.
Well, I mean, it certainly can be. I understand the sentiment, and I don't disagree that, from any individual perspective, Twitter is exactly what they say it is, for them, because that's how they're living their life. That's how they're perceiving the world. That's how they're interacting with the world. Yeah. For me, when I did get on it for the longest time, and I wish I would have from the very beginning. I wish in Christmas of 2017, when I quote unquote randomly, I no longer think it's random, by the way, stumbled into an Ethan Van Sciver video because Twitter had recommended it to me. And I was like, Ethan Van Sciver? That can't be the guy who drew Green Lantern Rebirth. That can't be the guy who drew Sinestro Corps War.
Yeah.
I can't be the guy that drew Flash Rebirth.
Yeah, and I went and watched his videos because of the art stuff he was talking about.
That's the thing, Russ. The video that was recommended to me was his trip to Michael's to buy art supplies if you want to learn how to draw comics.
Yeah, I thought it was a great video.
And I watched it, and it reignited the interest I used to have in drawing. Because when I was a teenager, I was managing a comic book shop. Wow. And I wanted to be a comic book artist. I wanted to be a penciler. And so when the shop was completely dead and all responsibilities had been taken care of and there was literally nothing left to do except just stand there, that's when I would work on my penciling. Yeah. And unfortunately, I didn't have the persistence back then. and I didn't have the wisdom, nor I think, honestly, I don't think the work ethic was up to snuff yet back then. I felt like I had to choose between writing and penciling. It didn't occur to me I could do both. And I realized that writing was so much easier for me, and I was so much better at it based on all the feedback I got from teachers, from family, from friends. I was so much better at it than penciling, and I knew it. And so what that did for me, because I wasn't ready yet, it set up this false expectation that, well, I can't do both. So boom, can't. That's a no-no.
Mm.
In this business, that will only get you problems. And if you put enough of those together, it's going to stop you from having any real progress that you want, that you define for yourself, whatever that is. So back then, though, I thought, well, I can't do both. And I'm way better at writing and I'm way faster at it. And people like it a whole lot more than my penciling. So I'm going to quote unquote take the easy route. I'm going to stop penciling and I'm only going to focus on writing. And I figured that if I did that, it would maximize my chances for being able to break into the industry. And I never stopped completely drawing. I never stopped completely, but for all intents and purposes, my penciling days were over. Until I saw that EVS video where he's going to Michael's saying you can buy everything you need to be a comic book artist for less than $100. So I watched it and I thought, man, I'm going to dig out my old art supplies. The last art class I took was in college back when I was getting my business degree. It was an elective and I really enjoyed it, but I couldn't finish the whole thing because my back gave out and I had to go have spinal surgery and then recuperate for 2 years. So I had to drop the class while I was enjoying it, but I still had my old art supplies because I always meant to go back and take the class again and just finish it just for enjoyment. So I dug my old art supplies out. I saw what I had. I saw what was still usable. And then I watched the video again and I just made a list of everything. And then I went to Michael's and I bought everything on the list. And so I think his total was something like $89 or something. I don't know. It did come under 100 when Ethan did it, and mine was probably in the 70s because I still had some supplies that were totally usable. So anyway, I just started drawing again, and I absolutely loved it. And I kept watching. I basically binge watched all of EVS's videos between Christmas of 2017 and New Year's Eve of 2017. And then because he only had like 7,000 subscribers, and I was able to binge watch all of the videos in that 1 week, and still have time for family holiday stuff. So New Year's Day 2018, and I promise, Russ, I'm looping this back to what we were talking about.
That's all right.
We're feedback loop, remember?
Yeah.
That's where you thought I took this rabbit trail, but I'm bringing it all home. I'm turning your feedback loop into a feedback array. So remember, chat, I put those phrases in the chat for a reason. Feedback loop, feedback array. You look those up on YouTube, you're going to see what's going on with indie comics. And we're all swimming around in the CG end of the pool. Some of us are also swimming into the other ends of the pool. There is stuff happening in the entire pool of indie comics where the feedback loop is turning into a feedback array. And I mean that in terms of excitement, in terms of books being produced, and in terms of money being generated. The cottage industry that we've built over the last several years, it's getting a rapid expansion. And before long, that cottage is going to be a house. And before long after that, that house is going to be a much bigger house. And it's going to keep growing for as long as we keep building it. So my point is, I get this after watching all of EVS's videos, I keep getting this random YouTube, I thought it was random, turns out it's not, recommend of this diversity in comics channel. I'm like, diversity in comics? Give me a break. I come back, I check out in 2017, the end of the year, I check into the industry to see the condition of what was going on. And it was a dog's breakfast of the vomit that it just spewed out after licking its own butt and eating grass out of the backyard. And then it puked it all up and then it ate it. And that was its breakfast. Okay. That was the comic book industry that I found in the end of 2017. And there's still chunks of corn that were whole, undisturbed, swimming around in the puke, maybe under a bubble. Those are the thoroughly decent, highly skilled people that were still working. People like Art T. Bear, who were working under those conditions. And yet they were still putting out phenomenal work. But for me, my days of trying to break into the mainstream were well and truly past. I made a really good run in 07, 08 until my back injury took me out for what ended up being over a decade. So when I had to drop that art class, I also had to drop all of my progress for breaking into the mainstream. The plan was to get published by Dark Horse, leverage that to get into DC, leverage that to get into Marvel, because I was a Marvel kid growing up. As much as I love the DC characters, for comics, almost all the comics until I started managing the comic book shop was all Marvel. So that was my plan. So 2018, New Year's Day. As far as I'm concerned, the mainstream industry is gone, done. It's a zombie shuffling around. And all this diversity in comics recommendations, I'm like, I didn't know how YouTube worked, really. I was like, it keeps recommending this over and over and over. Maybe if I just click on it once, it'll stop and try and recommending other videos, because ignoring it clearly isn't working. It just keeps recommending them. So I watched one diversity in comics video. Bam. I was like, I'm not the only one. Someone else sees this. And looking at the comments on the video, a lot of people see this. So that was the day I discovered what Comicsgate was. And that was the day where I said, looks like I've been Comicsgate for years and just didn't know it. And so I didn't care about the label of Comicsgate. I thought it was frankly, a kind of a dumb name. I didn't see the point of it. I had to actually do some research and learn how that came to be. And then when I found out the story, I thought it was hilarious, because it ended up being a slur that some social justice wackos decided to use and slap across the face of people who did not want it and didn't need it. And it was totally against their will that they got slapped on them. And then when I found out that they said, all right, now that it's here, I'm going to leave it here, and we're going to walk up, get in your face, and you're going to see it right in front of your nose. And you're going to keep seeing it every single day until you get sick of it, until you want us to take it off. And then we're going to say, no, we're not going to take it off. We're exercising our free will. You slapped this slur across us without asking, without permission. You violated our free will. So now we're going to show you what happens when we exercise our free will and stick this label right in your face, and we keep it there until you can't stand it anymore. And then we're going to keep it there a little longer. And then when you're ready to turn and walk away from us and leave us alone, then we'll turn around and walk away from where we were standing right in front of your nose. That's all it is. All you have to do is leave us alone. We don't want anything to do with you. You shouldn't want to have anything to do with us. Trust us. We got a little punk rock in us. It puts a little dip in our hip, a little glide in our stride that you don't seem to like very much. So do yourselves a favor, turn around, walk away, go do your own little thing over there. We'll do our thing over here, and everything's cool. Didn't work out that way. So in May 2018, I decided, all right, I'm going to fully embrace this Comicsgate label. And that's when I started day one of planning the Outliers universe, with the intention of publishing it at some future point in the crowdfunding model with Comicsgate. And there is a chain of events from that moment all the way up to this one where we're talking right here, Russ, as with production in as far as it's gone, as well as it's gone, considering all the obstacles in your life, in my life, in Inkspot's life, in Elizabeth, our graphic designer, all the stuff she's gone through. We are a team of bruised and battered soldiers. But the great thing about us is there's no quit. There's no such thing as impossible. For us, impossible is a word, not a limit, and not an excuse. It's a word that we use in our stories to communicate an idea within fiction.
Yeah.
For this team, I can tell you guys in the chat, for every single member of the team, Eric Weathers included, who enjoys being part of this hat group, we refuse to lose. Okay? The Outliers team, we refuse to lose. In our individual lives, in all of the conversations I've had with the team, it's simply not an option. So if we have to delay the launch because we have family health crises that we have to deal with, and if those delays stack up to a total of 2 years now, which they've done, that's all right. Those are obstacles. And we, the Outliers team, we assess obstacles, We decide how to get over, under, or around them, or sometimes we just run right through them and break them to pieces if that's what it takes. Whatever is the most efficient, most effective way to do it that has the most impact, that's how we're going to do it.
It's all
So
about the comics.
that is absolutely it. It's the comics and the readers. It's us, the workers, trying to provide the best product for you, the customers, you, the bosses. So as we kind of march forward with Outliers updates, and we're going to give you kind of a summary real quick, and then we're going to show you guys some really cool art, and then we're going to call it a day. Because Russ has work to do. I've got lunch to eat. I need to rest my voice and my lungs. Recovery has defied all explanation from conventional medical quote unquote wisdom, but I still have to pace myself, and that's one of the key components in having such an amazingly rapid recovery. They expected me to be in the hospital when they rolled me in there for 3 to 6 months. They didn't tell me that until after I was rolling out in a week. And on my last day, when they were getting ready to send me on my way, they said, "We thought you were going to be in here 3 to 6 months, possibly based on the severity of your case, maybe even 9 months." Because we've got people in here right now who've been here vegetating on a respirator for 9 months. And the floor that I was on, the expectation is you either will get intubated and vegetate for a few months or longer until you eventually recover, or they roll you out to the morgue. So the fact that I not only recovered, but did it in a week and did it with such joy and happiness and humor, so that everyone in my medical team walked in either depressed or fatigued or whatever else they had going on in their lives from caring from those type of patients for so long. Every single one of them walked out. Number one, they walked out a comic skater. Number two, they walked out with a standing offer for free graphic novels from Outlier Comics for as long as they want, delivered to their house free of charge. Number three, they became so inspired by this random guy who wanders in and has a recovery that defies all expectation that they started telling other people. And I started getting visitors to my room that really, by strict medical protocols, they didn't need to be there. But they wanted to come meet this guy who did the impossible. Remember, impossible is a word. It's not a limit. It's not an excuse. They wanted to meet this guy that they said, you're not going to believe it. You just have to go in there and meet him. And it was my mission that no matter what they had going on in their lives, when they walked out of there, they felt better than when they walked in. And it really taught me something very powerful. And that is, we never know what kind of impact we're going to have on those around us, positive or negative, right? So if we make a conscious effort to try and make it positive, then before you know it, that is going to be those good vibes that we send out. Even if we try just the minimal effort, one thing, one day, one person, they either feel that, and for a moment, their frown turns upside down, and voila, you just work magic. You just help somebody improve the quality of their life. But most of the time, they'll send it right back to you, or they'll send it out to someone else, or both at the same time. And if we can get CG into actually believing that this is not only possible, but it's been happening. And the last few weeks, it's been happening a whole lot more. And it can keep happening a whole lot more if we just make it happen. Then I think we're going to see amazing things. And that, my friends, is when a feedback loop, the customer creator relationship, success for both, because the reader gets what they want and they're entertained and they're inspired and they're encouraged by the stories they read, or they're spooked, which is exactly what they wanted when they bought the book. They get what they want. Well, then their quality of life improves a bit. And the creator is getting the satisfaction that their stories are being read, and they're getting the money they need to pay their bills, and to get all of this stuff, whether it's compliments or criticism or whatever. Those are tools that they can use to improve their skills and continue to increase their own quality of life. And this is a feedback loop. Okay. Now you put that feedback loop in the middle of a group of people like CG, and suddenly it turns into a feedback array. So imagine that feedback loop that goes that's tied to another feedback loop that's going this way. And then another one that's going this way. Another one's going this way. And before you know it, you've got this 360-degree array of feedback loops that are magnifying all of those effects from one feedback loop into all of them. That's what I see CG as. I see it as a one unified body of loosely affiliated individuals, component parts that together are bound with common views, common beliefs, common experiences, and a whole lot of people who don't call themselves CG, but have the same beliefs and the same principles, and they're living the same kind of a life and making their dreams come true. They just don't ever put the label on their shirt. Well, I'm happy to hang with all of those people, along with all of my CG people that are wearing the label on their shirt. Because to me, they're all the same people. And I personally don't care what label they're wearing on their name tag. I don't care if it says, "Hi, my name is Russ," and then has a Comicsgate logo on it, or if it says, "Hi, my name is Russ," and then it has Comic Book Black Belt logo on it. Okay? People are people. So personally, I don't know how guys in the chat view it. I don't speak for anyone but myself, but personally, my CG name tag, I've spent so much time in the disinfecting light of the sun that thing crumbled to dust and blew away a long time ago. The only thing that's left is the adhesive that is still in the shape of that Comicsgate name tag. Okay? And when I'm ready, not when someone else is ready, but when I'm ready, I will choose when to wash the last of the adhesive off, because I will then know for a fact, in an indisputable, self-evident, objectively verifiable, cross-corroborating bits of eyewitness testimony will tell me that there's no longer any need to wear it, because the 21st century golden age of comics is here. And at that point, the name Comicsgate becomes a footnote in the history of how the industry went from a trash fire to a phoenix that rose out of the fire, and together we all created something new. And a strong industry that was built on foundational principles that not only was the old one built on, but some new ones as well. And when that house gets built on that kind of foundation, that's when we all wake up one morning and realize the golden age of comics in the 21st century is here. There's no mainstream versus indie anymore. It's all just one. And then there's a few knuckleheads who will always be out on the fringe doing their own thing, failing miserably and blaming the rest of us for their failures. That's okay, because Comicsgate and all of comics and indie comics and the whole enchilada is a microcosm of humanity. And that's just what humans do. No matter how many of us get together and do great things together, there's always going to be some knuckleheads off in the corner, picking their noses, eating their boogers, and jibber-jabbering away, talking about how they're great and we suck. That's just always, you're going to find it in every walk of life.
Yeah.
So the sooner that we can basically turn our backs on them and say, let the booger eaters eat their boogers. Who cares?
Haters going to hate.
Yeah, we're just going to do our thing and be wildly successful because we've got this phenomenal relationship between readers and people who want to make stories.
Yeah. I mean, but I come from a slightly different angle. I've never been a badge wearer. Never been a tagger, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
But my view is, I speak to everyone on an individual level. I never tar anyone with any brush. You're all individuals, every one of you out there in the chat. I don't care what tags you do or don't use. If you're decent, if you're professional or courteous or whatever it might be, then you'll get my support and you'll get my loyalty, and that's the end of it. It does. And I've had people approach me going, "Oh, you get involved with CG, or do you do?" I think I reposted something from Dale Keown.
Yeah,
and somebody said something, and I'm like, "It's art. What's wrong with you?" I don't recognize what so many people describe as this group. I don't recognize that. All I recognize are good people. I won't throw any of them under the bus, because everyone I've met online recently, say in the last 5 years, most of it seems to be CG, because they're so interactive. They'll talk. People will talk to you. But I've met all kinds of people, and it all comes down to individuals. If you support me, if you're kind to me, if you're courteous, if you're polite, if you're professional, then you will have my support and my respect. And it's as simple as that. I don't need a badge. I just need to interact with the fine people that I have interacted with so far.
Yeah.
Hopefully many more. And comics are, I'm just so fortunate to be involved in it now. Like we've talked about having previous careers. I had those careers when I had them. I've got this one now, and I kind of feel like I hit just at the right time, because
I do too, for sure.
It's what I want. That's all I've ever wanted to do, really. And it didn't matter in looking at the industry as a whole. It's always been difficult to break in, always. And there's always been a bit of nepotism involved, and there's always been a bit of cliquing involved. It's been like that since day one.
Human beings.
Yeah, human beings are like
behavior.
that. Also, it does help if you wanted to draw for Marvel and you kind of needed to live in New York. It did help. It did help, but in a big way. And taking the editors out to lunch or just hanging around, just doing all that stuff. And so it has been very difficult. It's like butting your head against a brick wall sometimes, trying to get into those things. And now I'm in a situation where it's kind of like the opportunity now for people in comics is to drive it themselves. That's the difference. And I think that's why there's a lot of fear around, is because it's about getting out there and doing it for yourself. And not everybody is built that way.
Yeah.
Not everybody is built to do that. Not everybody is built to be honest and transparent and able to communicate with other people. Not everybody's built that way. And I'd really like to just sit here and draw in a dungeon. That's what you want to do.
That's how I'd rather write and edit.
Exactly. Just rather sit here and not speak. But that's not good either. And actually, it's good for my soul.
Yeah,
it's good for me.
It's true.
To talk to other people, to be here with you right now, to interact with the chat and with people out there. If you'd have told anybody 30, 40 years ago what we'd be doing right now, interacting, long distance friendships, I've built a proper friendship with you, like we would down the pub every week. It's amazing what is going on right now. The internet's a double-edged sword, no doubt. It can be hideous, but at the same time, it can be a beautiful thing, because we all get to meet so many good people that we would never normally meet, and interact with them. And us, I mean, we've got an international team, and I've been in international teams before, and it's fantastic. And it's that reaching out, because that's what we're all about. We're about communication. We're about that feedback loop, and to be able to touch other people's lives and have them, give that back to you. And I'm not talking about the money. I'm just talking about the fact that people actually communicate back with you and go, that meant something to me. I really enjoyed that story. I really enjoyed that art. And that it's now in their brain. Yeah. And so it's part of their imagination. It's part of their life experience. You've been able to work your way into somebody else's life experience and that's a memory. You're there. That's incredibly important.
Yep. I agree 100%. And speaking of outreach, before we get into the Outliers production schedule update and show off your artwork, I just want to say that to me, outreach is key to whether we're talking CG specifically or indie comics in general. In my opinion, the key to keep expanding the pool so that there's always plenty of room for us to all swim and do our own thing, and then swim together if we want, have a live and let live attitude, and no one's getting on each other's nerves to the point where they start trying to drown each other in the pool, like in the swamp that is the former mainstream industry. I think the outreach is huge. I think, as a matter of fact, I think it's critical. I think it's the only thing to get us out of any sort of danger of stagnation, possibly actual stagnation, which I believe that I have seen. But I'm happy to say I think it's already been shaken off, because I see growth that we didn't have before as an overall group. And so I just want to say that if people are willing to reach out and bring their friends or their colleagues or their neighbors or just people they respect and admire, just kind of bring them to the point where people can see what CG actually is. Forget all of the nonsense that it gets labeled as that's patently false, but just see it what it is. See what the indie comics people around, like in the neighborhood over from CG, what they're doing, because they're throwing great barbecues. You know, we're throwing this raging kegger of a block party that's loads of fun. And of course, there's always going to be knuckleheads that have a little too much to drink and they do stuff that they shouldn't and they act a fool. And so the rest of us have to come along and say, hey, buddy, you're having a lot of fun, aren't you? Well, the rest of us aren't. So could we just kind of like figure out how you can have your fun and the rest of us can have fun and we can all enjoy this together? So there are those of us who do that, believe me. We do it without credit. We do it preferably like a ghost. You don't see us doing it. You don't see us when we show up. You don't see us when we leave, but the result is there. That's how we like it. But what I'll say is that there's other groups, other neighborhoods having their barbecues and their block parties. Now imagine how cool it would be if we in CG and they in their neighborhoods like basically sent a paper airplane invite over the back fence and it sails across the easement into the next block. And somebody picks it up and finds it, and it's an invite to a Labor Day party. It just so happens I'm a somewhat of a strategic planner, and I've been planning a few parties for CG lately. One of them was last night on Pontificators. One of them was my return to YouTube. Unfortunately, I had a whole lot more energy inside than I was able to express on the outside, so they're pretty mellow, pretty dry. The Pontificators last night, I was able to actually shift into first gear. I got more gears as my recovery continues, my lung capacity and my voice come back. I'll be able to ramp up the energy accordingly. And I'll say that I'm planning a Labor Day party for CG, and I'm doing some outreach to the U.S. military. In my past, I said I've had multiple careers, and I've had the privilege to interface with the military in a variety of ways. I've never been enlisted myself. Unfortunately, I had health problems that disqualified me from passing even the basic U.S. Army physical exam. They wouldn't take me because I had bad knees and I had pediatric arthritis in my shins. And I tempted fate and tried to get in anyway, but I ended up getting a call from someone else who kind of steered me that way and away from the recruiter's office. But anyway, I have worked in and among and with military members virtually my entire adult life. I've got family who have served in combat. I've got friends who have served in combat. So I'll say this: I've done freelance contract work for the U.S. government, and I won't say which three-letter agencies, but they're the big ones. And I've worked with, on that sort of a basis, I've worked with law enforcement from the local level, all the way up to the big one that J. Edgar used to run, and a lot in between that I won't talk about. However, my point is that I'm very well networked, I'll say, with folks in the U.S. military. And so I'm reaching out over the next few days. I put plans in last week. They didn't work out. I had to deal with some other stuff. I kept getting these surprise visits from family members who wanted to see how my recovery was going because they heard the stories. They wanted to see it for themselves. So I had these wonderful visits from family, unexpected. It took me away from my work, but it was okay because family, for me, always comes before work. So for the folks who I have said that I'm working on a little military outreach, I apologize for the delay. It's like comic book production. Things out of your control will always come up. The best you can do is assess them when they come in, adapt to them, and then overcome whatever challenges or obstacles they're putting in your way. So Go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying things are changing.
Yes,
things are moving at an alarming rate. I may have some news next week, which will be good for places that to take comics and what you're doing as well. But there are other things happening in professional arenas as well. Just stuff is happening and things are changing, and they're changing for the better. It's always the way. these things come in cycles. There's I was watching some stupid comedy on the TV the other day. It was a Carry On film, and people were getting very upset about a beauty pageant for women, and this was back in the 60s, and so you can see that like censorship and people getting upset about all kinds of different things. It goes in cycles, and it goes with like a pendulum swinging backwards and forwards, and things are definitely on the move at the moment. And so much so in comics, I think.
I agree 100%.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, man, people are joking in the chat that I'm a CIA spook. I'll tell you guys this. I was never a spook, and I was never a door kicker, tanker, or gunner on the battlefield. When I said that my health problems go all the way back to childhood and they disqualified me from even passing the basic Army physical exam, it's not that I couldn't do the physical work, because I could. I was actually in excellent shape. I was a competitive athlete from the age of 7 all the way through to the end of high school. So basically into my early adulthood at the age of 18. And I was in extremely good shape at that time. But you have certain medical conditions, they don't take you. That it's just period, the end. And that's because if you're out in combat, your battle buddies have to be able to rely on you to do anything and everything necessary to keep yourself alive so you can keep them alive. And if everybody in the squad or the platoon or whatever it is, the division, the battalion, if everybody's doing that for each other, that's how you maximize your chances of bringing everybody home. You minimize casualties doing it that way. So I accepted the fact that I wasn't going to get in and be able to serve in the way that I wanted to, but I found a lot of other ways to be able to serve through support and logistics and through helping families of deployed service members and all kinds of other stuff that I don't talk about and probably never will. But just to kind of toss you a bone here, Eric, let me see if I can find your CIA comment, excuse me, because I like you, and I want to address this. Because sometimes the stuff that I say, it's a mix of metaphor and literal speech, and I use metaphorical language to communicate a whole lot of information, basically just give it to you in an impression. And then I use literal language to kind of reinforce the fuzziness of the impression so that you get the idea of where I'm going with what I'm trying to say. I can't find the comment. I don't want to take up the show with this any longer. So I'll just say that Eric, I think, was the one who said I'm a CIA spook. And I'll be totally clear. I was never a spook. I was never a door kicker, never a tanker, never a gunner. However, I do have, still had back then, I still have now, a very particular set of skills, as Liam used to say.
I will find you, and I will kill you.
They're gained from a lifetime of experience, living a lifetime of adventure that took the most average of average people and allowed him to go on one wild ride of a life. Now, what happened to me with COVID a few weeks ago was not the first near-death experience I had. It's the first out-of-body experience I've ever had, but not the first near-death one. It was my 6th, and I'm not counting close calls. I'm only counting, like the so-called experts say, I should have died, and yet I walked away smiling. This time I actually walked away laughing when I threw the Reaper out of my room. And I'll be happy to tell the details of that story on another show. But this was the 6th, and I'm not yet 50 years old. I'd like it to be the last until the real one. Because quite frankly, I think I've gotten enough, more than my fair share of them. And I really don't need any more, at least from my perspective. But here's what I'll say to you guys. The freelance contract work that I did for law enforcement and for a bunch of 3-letter agencies, and the corporation that I worked with that was R&D, high tech, Fortune 100 with facilities on 6 continents and products in use on 7. I'll put it this way. If you needed a guy that you could drop anywhere on the world, any place in the planet, and you had some certain technical equipment that needed to be set up or repaired or optimized, and let's just say, for one example, a real life one that's very vague, you needed a secure communication system that had already been designed for that specific location, for very specific needs. and you needed someone to deploy it, install it, test it, optimize it, and then walk away, and you have a fully functional, fully secure encrypted communications network, you might call me. You might call one of my coworkers. So that's just one example of the type. I was a tech guy. Okay. I still somewhat am. I'm far more into working with people these days than working with electronics and computers and code. But at the end of the day, it's a part of my background that I apply like anybody else can for their life experience, which is unique to them because they're able to do stuff that I don't have the first clue about how to do it. And they can apply it to their comics career. And they can take their entire life experience and transfer so many things that would make your head spin. Now, I happen to have lived a life where I got very, very good at taking skills that were taught to me by excellent teachers, coaches, trainers, instructors, officers. I'll just leave it at that. That I was able to figure out very early in life. I could take skills, let's say 3 skills, and I could combine them into what I refer to as a super skill, which is basically I take the best of those 3 that I think I might need in a certain situation, and I turn it into one super skill. And then I combine that with 2 other super skills I've got in my tool bag. And I take all the best of those things and I combine it. And I combine and recombine anything I need from my life experience to apply to the job at hand. Because I'm a builder, right? I'm a builder as well as a destroyer. So last night on the Pontificators, I did a little cleanup work in an area of comics that has already been destroyed. So I knocked down a few more bits of rubble, and I tried to sweep them out of the way, right? That's all that last night was, if you watch the Pontificators and what I said about Jim Lee and Quesada and the rest of those chuckleheads. At the same time, I understand that I have limits. Everybody does, right? We all are average people who live extraordinary lives. We have extraordinary life experiences, but we all have limits. So when it comes to what I bring from my past and I apply to my future, and when I say that I move very well among every branch of the military, and when I say that I'm extending an informal invite to the special forces first, and depending on who's able to RSVP, then that tells me the most efficient, effective way to send the mass public invite to the rest of the U.S. military, delivered with the most impact. See, all this is, I have limits. So all I do is I come up with ideas, I test them. If I think they'll work, then I'll try and implement them in the real world, and I'll just see what happens. And then I read the reactions, and I see how close am I? Do I need to improve? Have I done better than I thought I would? And then I go from there, right? All of us can do that in comics. As a reader, we can do that to figure out what can I do to figure out, since I'm paying X amount of money and I'm pre-ordering a book, what can I do to figure out the best use of my time and my money so that I'm only buying stuff that I think I'll like? And I'm only supporting creators who I think have my best interests at heart. I'm only respecting creators who treat me with respect and treat others with respect. So even as a backer, I used to apply this stuff because I backed over 150 books over the course of like 3 years or something, and then I had to stop for a while, and then I just started picking up again before I really got Outlier Comics underway in September of last year. But then I have to pace myself because so much of my money is going directly into funding the entire Outlier Comics production, both the company and the book. So I have to be very selective about what I back these days. So I don't always get the book that I think looks good or the creator that I want to support because I have limits, right? I've got constraints I'm working in. Russ, you got books you want to buy, but you don't because you've got constraints of time, of money, of who knows what else is going on in your life. So the best we can do is just work within the constraints we have, try to exceed those constraints when possible, but recognize when they cannot be exceeded because we all have limits. And then we work the best we can with what we've got. So when I was talking about taking that feedback loop of the customer-creator relationship and turning it into a feedback array, that's all of us doing that, working within our own constraints, within our own limits. However, the one thing I will not do is say that impossible is a limit or impossible is an excuse. To me, it's a word. If I allowed myself to be constrained by the idea that impossible is a limit or an excuse, Outlier Comics wouldn't exist. Russ and I wouldn't know each other. We would have never met. So, as we're about to kind of wind down the show with an Outliers update and art showing off, I'm sorry, Russ showing off some artwork, I just want all you guys to know that the team that is working on the Outliers refuses to lose. The team that is working on the Outliers does not quit. And that for the team that's working on the Outliers, impossible is just a word. It's not a limit or excuse. And it's a word that we put in our stories so that you, the reader, think that there's no way that our heroes can get out of this. Or there's no way that when the big threat shows up, which is not in issue 1, it's not in chapter 1, chapter 2, or any of the backup stories. When the big threat shows up, we want you to think, holy mackerel. It's not impossible for them to save the day, but I have no idea how they're going to do it, and I can't wait to find out. That's what we're putting together for you. That is what is starting to launch in March or April of next year. And so I'm going to turn it over to Russ. Cool. He's going to show you some pages. Yeah. And then I'm going to kind of give you a summary of where we're at in production, and then we'll call it a day.
I'm now concerned because I'm thinking exactly the same things as Mo Biggs at the same time.
You and Mo are in tune?
Yeah, we were definitely in tune. I was thinking exactly the same thing when you said what you said.
What did Mo say?
Well, you said I'm going to show and I was thinking some Russ work. And
what is Art going to show off some Russ work?
And Mo said exactly the same thing. Hello, Antoine.
Good to see you, Antoine. Thanks for joining.
Also, if you want to see how things are changing, they really are. It's happening in real time. Go check out Aaron Lepresti, is it? Aaron Lepresti?
Aaron Lepresti.
Yeah, and
Wraith of God.
Yeah, and Roland Mann on Thinking Critical. Thinking Critical is a channel. You're probably all aware of it. I really like Thinking Critical because they talk about everything. They go right across mainstream, indies, all kinds of stuff. And they are quite focused on the mainstream stuff, really, but they do everything. And he and Roland Mann were on with Wes, and they had a fantastic conversation. It was really good. Really, really good.
I just put it in the chat. So, Russ, thank you for that. And if you'd be so good, please take it away and tell us what we're looking at.
Okay. This is just a couple of pages from the start of the second half. We're having a bit of fun. There's a little bit of interplay between the characters, and Minimart has kind of played a joke on High Tea.
So Minimart is the guy behind the hat, right?
So you see the little
he's
guy.
The little person. He's a little person. He's got dwarfism, and he's the prankster of the team. And he and High Tea have a bit of an antagonistic relationship.
And so High Tea's come down in size as a janitor, and he's basically dropped something in the hat and got High Tea to come after the hat. He snatched it off him. He's walked away laughing, popped it on, and he sees some goop rolling down his nose. So he's not too pleased with that. So it's just just some interplay there. We just there's a bit of pacing going on in the book in general, because it started off with with quite a pace, slowed it down just in the middle here, and then it then builds a quite a crescendo at the end of the book. And then this is in dealing with the goop and the other people in the room talking to him. You'll find more about that when you see the script in the final book, and just a little bit of laughter at the end there. So there you go. They're just, like I say, they're character building, interplay, not majorly exciting pages, and that's part of the challenge, is to make those pages where there is some interplay between characters. There's not massive fights going on, or space armadas coming in, to make them interesting visually. And I'm not just talking about having the story, making sure that the sequentials are correct, but also interesting to look at, so that it draws you in and gets you to continue to read. So there you go.
Excellent.
And
Yeah.
I've got anything.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go on from there. Got a couple of Only Death Can Save Us pages to show you.
Let's see them.
There's a cover from issue 4, which will be the first part of Only Death Can Save Us book 2.
You know what, Russ? Hang on there 1 second. I just realized I didn't full screen you.
Oh, right. Okay.
Let me take care of that. And let's get your artwork up there nice and big.
Okay.
I'm a little rusty on StreamYard, guys. Sorry about that. There we go.
It's the other one.
You're up on the screen, aren't you?
Just my face.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay. There
you go. All right. Okay.
Getting back in the swing of things. We're doing it live.
Nip back so that you can see that page a little bit bigger. There you go. So it's Mini Mart having a good laugh at High T's expense. But something that's very important is to obviously get your characters looking individual, so that you can recognize them at a glance. Because sometimes you're not going to be able to put the full detail in. You've got to be able to see them, and also emotional responses. Then this is the cover to Only Death Can Save Us issue 4. So issue 4, 5, and 6 are all part of, for Arrow Comics, are all part of book 2. But obviously, crowdfunder gets everything first. Mm-hmm. So that's the cover for that, and a page from the internals there. That's from like the fact files and world building part of the book. So as you can see, there's lots of stuff going on.
Excellent. Thank you for the update.
That's okay.
I love seeing the art from Only Death. It's one of my favorite books. So many people have said the same thing. It's such a cool concept, and I'm not saying that just because we're working together. I was a backer of yours before we ever talked about working together.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. No, I have a book by hat. I can always tell when someone's shining. Fair enough. There's a slightly different weight to it.
Antoine, I will say, despite your knowledge and experience with your own pork pie hat, I'll say that the stuff that's in there is actually a high tech. It's like the energy. Like similar to energy drinks in real life, marathon runners and other endurance athletes, they eat this stuff, or I guess they swallow it or slurp it. I don't know. I've never had it myself.
I used to use it when I was training. So when I was doing the week-long training, it would just be like a
packet of gel,
and you just squeeze it into your mouth, and
you just suck it down, and it's like
down,
instant energy. And then depending on how it's formulated, there might be some carbohydrates in there to also give you some midterm energy. So basically what the Outliers have done is, with Mini Mart, his speedster powers come from his body metabolizing sugar and basically turning it into this super speed fuel. And so he's constantly hauling around junk food because he never wants to run out of fuel. He absolutely loves being a speedster. He loves being a superhero, and he's just living his best life when he's running faster than everyone else. So in chapter 1, you actually see him with a backpack hauling around a bunch of junk food, and you see him with, like a giant soda in his hand in the concept art. And that's because he's just always like Brad Pitt in the Ocean's 11 movies. Pitt is always munching on something, an apple, a Twinkie, whatever it is. Mini Mart's always trying to just feed that desire to always be super, right? Well, in chapter 2, 30 days have passed from their first mission as a team to when we see them in their home base and they're working out in their personal gym. And so by then, the R&D people for the government that the Outliers report to, that they're funded by, they've taken that concept of energy gel and they've ramped it up to 11. And so if Mini Mart needs energy, he's now getting it from that gel. If High T needs energy to bulk up to his massive form, he can get it from that gel. So a little trick was played where Mini Mart squirted that stuff into High T's hat, and then when High T put it on, that's why he took a. Oh, there you go, Antoine. Eating a banana and 2 plums at the moment, so you can certainly relate, my man. Okay, guys, we're closing in on the 2-hour mark. My voice is tired. My lungs need a break, and I need to eat lunch. So I am going to wrap this up with just kind of an overall production update on Outliers Volume 1 and kind of give you a state of the union for Outliers Publishing. And then we'll have to call it a day, and we'll see each other again next week. So where we're at is, Russ mentioned earlier, the pencils are completely done for all of Volume 1. The inks are rapidly closing in to completion. He's got about 6.5 more pages, and then he'll be fully, the book, main story will be fully inked. Now we have a backup origin story for our flagship character, and part of that will be told in this 8-page backup. Our flagship character, the Saint. It's going to tell the moment, the event that happened that triggered the onset of his powers. And so it'll be a story where he's in combat. He's a Green Beret, and he gets counter sniped and shot in the head. And that is what triggers the onset of his powers. So we'll see how that happens. We'll see kind of inside his mind, his brain, whatever, the change. And then we'll see like the first little consequence of that in that 8-page backup. And then what I'd like to do is offer a couple more between 1 and 2, depending on what the team, their schedules are like with their other projects. And depending on how well the campaign does, I'd love to hit some stretch goals where we offer you another 8-page backup for Misperception, who's the lady of the team. And again, telling part of her origin. And then I'd love to offer you guys the opportunity to vote on a third 8-page origin story, where you can vote on who from the rest of the team would you like to see in that particular Volume 1. And if we could hit that stretch goal, then you guys get to vote, and whatever it is, then I write the story right then and there, and I have my team already, kind of in the queue, ready to go, so that Russ can draw it, Inkspots can color it, Eric can letter it, and then very quickly we have it put together. And I already have kind of the framework for the rest of the team's origin stories planned a long time ago, so I can write it very quickly, and we can get that done faster than you would believe. So that's kind of where we're at. New updates in a couple of weeks probably will start going out via the mail list, along with all the other usual YouTube, Twitter, all that good stuff. And we're on pace to have an absolutely fun time in March, April, kicking off the campaign, launching that rocket. So for anybody who's still wondering about Black and White Volume 2, the launch is scheduled for today. Ethan Van Sciver said publicly that he was going to host it. So I know that the goal is that's going to happen sometime today on Ethan's channel, but I don't have any more concrete details than that. So that's about it, Russ. Is there anything you've got before we close it down?
No. I mean, my sign-up page will be going up next week for book 2, but most of my communication will be via the first book's mail list and my mail list. So,
okay,
keep your eyes on the mail.
Cool. All right. Well, in that case, everyone, let's all go out and make a great day.
Yeah.
See you next week.
Das wird